I'm curious, are you living in an echo chamber and don't know how to get out? Are you someone who wants to learn to listen and learn from the world around you in a way that helps you really maintain an open mind and even keep your emotions in check? If so, stay tuned. We are deep in the political season, and if you're like me, it feels harder and harder to have respectful political conversations, whether in person or online. In fact, you might feel a bit traumatized by the process. Just the other day, I was on a podcast and there were four of us, and we were discussing this post that was on X, the platform. And it was a post by a CEO who was basically took to it a little bit in frustration and a little bit to kind of share another message. The tone of the post was three quarters seeming a little bit patronizing. It was actually kind of, when you were reading it, you were like, where's this guy going and how dare he? And then the last quarter, he kind of ended with a positive message, really one of empowerment and the fact that he didn't need his team to tell him what it was they were going to be doing every day. That just as long as they were getting to the end result, just as long as they were getting to the goals that they all wanted to do together, he just wanted them to do their job and to do it well and to have the freedom they needed to get the job done. Our focus of that discussion, that podcast that was four of us, really was to focus on, should that CEO have posted that way at all? Was it the right way? And I'm going to be honest with you. I talk about caring leadership. I talk about listening. And my natural stance in most cases is going to be, would this be a harsh response? Would I normally think this is a harsh response? And I would normally think it was. It would probably be something that would be a little bit off-putting to me, a little bit condescending, a little bit flippant about his team members' current work situation. And then in the end, again, ending with that general sense of empowerment. Now, I speak and I write about caring leadership and listening. And so, again, I would typically want it to be a little bit softer. But after visiting his website, I found myself actually advocating for his way of being. I looked at his website and it was so funny. You had to press the down arrow and it said scroll down. And as you scrolled down, the screen moved to the left. And you're like, wait a second, is something wrong with my computer? I'm scrolling down, and it's going the opposite direction. And it made me realize, aha, this is a person who already founded a company that makes us think differently about our world and about different things that we were able to do. When I actually took time to process his message, I didn't actually care as much about his delivery. In the end, what I discovered is this: because I was kind of forced to look at the situation and I knew that I was going to have to come at it from different directions because that was kind of the foundation of this podcast conversation. I paused and I was able to step outside of my own echo chamber, that echo chamber that says, this is how this post should go. This is how people should show up. This is how people should talk. This is what people should believe. So I had to understand that I had my own echo chamber. And in that moment, not really realizing it, I had stepped outside of it to recognize that this gentleman had a different way of showing up. I had to either accept it or not. And in this case, there was something almost freeing in the way he posted, because there was this sense of, I don't really care if you like the way I'm presenting it. In the end, I want my people to be empowered. I want them to do their job, which in the end, for me, Heather, I automatically thought that that is the way to show up with care. If for him to be authentically himself, for him to make sure he's empowering his team. So, what is an echo chamber? So, if you're like me, you've seen posts lately, particularly in this political climate, that are saying, I'm with her, or I'm not with her, or I'm with him, as we're looking at our two major political parties and all the different variations around that. Now, I have a degree in political science and I have a degree in law. And so I'm going to be honest, I normally, this is natural for me to kind of be thinking about both sides. And no, this is not a political conversation. No, this is not a video or a podcast that's going to be talking to you about whose side is right and all of that. But I do believe in the political process and I believe in the Constitution. And I'm all for people sharing their beliefs and engaging in open and respectful discourse. What I cannot stomach, though, is hate, total disregard, divisiveness, and the one-sided nature of much of what I have been seeing. I talk a lot about and write a lot about and teach a lot about active listening, but I have to say, I'm not seeing a lot of active listening going on right now. It seems to be more about this is how I see it, this is my way, and I am right. But here's the thing. We cannot lead ourselves, build a winning culture, build a winning team if we don't learn to listen to other people and to do our best to understand them. Now, here's something that you didn't just hear me say. I am not saying that when you listen to someone that you have to agree with what you hear. I am not saying that when you seek to understand someone that you have to understand and agree or accept what they say. What I'm saying is that how can you see the good or the bad, the righteous or the anything inside of another person's position if you don't at least, at a minimum, take time to understand them? So I'm seeing people who they've known, let's say friends, for 45 years, suddenly disowning or disavowing or just unfriending each other because of who they are or who they are not for. This is an example of an echo chamber. And to a large extent, we are all part of this. We all feel kind of more comfortable when we are with people who look like us, who believe what we believe. And the problem, though, with this very natural way of us doing these things is that we become hypersensitive to what is different from us, what are differing views, differing voting patterns, plain just different from us. Now, this is a dangerous place to be, a dangerous place to live, because we begin to resort to this holding pattern of sameness, which sometimes protects us and sometimes hold us back from the real sense of understanding others' points of view. Because we get so overwhelmed by how different changes our emotions in such a negative way. At least we allow them to get in that way. We allow them to make us that way. Then we feel this need to do things like disengage with posts that seem counter or different to our beliefs, or unfriend or unfollow a friend of 45 years. So, is there value? Because you may be asking this of me. Is there value, though, Heather, in having an echo chamber, living inside the echo chamber? So, for those listening, you might be thinking that. And there are times that sometimes living in that echo chamber and keeping us safe is justified. And so I would say, yes, there is that situation that applies. Listening to everyone all the time is an overwhelming task. And I also know, at least in the Christian context, which is the context I'm coming from right now, that we are to avoid the occasion that leads us to sin. So if we continually encounter someone in person, online, who professes a position that is staunchly against us, and we are against it, and it moves us to the lesser side of ourselves emotionally, it might be wise to disengage or to unfriend or unfollow, because interacting with them might not allow us to continue to be our best selves. This aligns with what I really discuss a lot about in my newest book, when I talk about knowing our own limits. In many ways, knowing our own limits is in acting upon what we know about our limits is demonstrating strong self-leadership. However, I'd like to propose a few alternatives to simply unfriending someone when they express a dissenting opinion or support a belief that is not our own. These alternatives also demonstrate strong self-leadership, which I think we all are wanting to get to. Before I lay out some of these ways to maybe even have a more mature approach to when we encounter a dissenting opinion, I'm not sure I've actually mentioned here yet that my new book, The Art of Self-Leadership, Discover the Power Within You and Learn to Lead Yourself, is actually available on pre-order now. You can go to Amazon and do your pre-order. I decided it was important to really drill down as you think about my kind of overarching concept of caring leadership. There are 9 behaviors that first big, most important behavior is self-leadership. And so I'm excited to dig deep and to talk about all the ways that we can learn to lead ourselves, learn to learn from our own choices. So this book is going to be out in February, but it's on pre-order. It's on pre-order right now. Just go pick up your copy. If you're wanting to be a person who doesn't want to be a person who's waiting for someone else to give them permission to be the kind of leader or person they are today, who wants to stop being on the blame game and to say, I decide I'm going to make these choices. I'm going to remove myself from an echo chamber. That's what this book is for. It's really kind of an empowerment book for both professional and personal development. And it says, I'm learning to lead myself first. So now let's dive in to a more mature way to think about how do we go about addressing when someone expresses a dissenting opinion, a counter opinion, something that's against maybe what we believe in a way that's more mature, one that shows and demonstrates strong self-leadership. So here's the first thing. You need to be fully present and listen. And you hear me talk about this all the time, but it's so important to take the time to be fully present with the other person, what it is that they're proposing, not necessarily to find a way to agree, but to find a way to understand why they take the position that they do. Work hard to remove any emotional response to their position and instead stay focused on the facts as much as possible. This might mean that you need to set aside time without all of the distractions around us and take that time to take it all in. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever changed your perspective of an issue after truly listening to someone else's reasoning? What led you to that change? I want you to ponder that as we continue on and I continue to share some ways to be more mature as we think about how do we stay open-minded? How do we remain curious when someone else is presenting an opposite side of view? How do we step outside our own echo chamber, our own position to really, truly get someone else's side? Number two, the second way is to prioritize the relationship over being right. I want you to ask yourself whether your friendship with that person who is maybe presenting a different view, a dissenting opinion, a polarizing or polar belief from you is more important than being right. And if it's worth it to sit in the presence of their dissenting opinions and their views. Can the two of you agree to disagree and still remain friends? Can you just not talk about the differences that might divide you and instead focus on what makes you dear friends? I do this all the time. I have a few very close friends, very close girlfriends who they definitely have very different political beliefs and even some social beliefs. It doesn't make a sense or anything to us. We are not less close because of where we stand on the political spectrum. We bond, we move forward in our own relationship based upon what we have in common and what we know and love the most about one another. We don't judge one another for where we stand on any issue, but we do respect each other no matter what. We just don't talk about the issues that could divide us. Let me give you an example. Consider the friendship that existed between Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace, and Antonin Scalia, two Supreme Court justices with opposing judicial philosophies. Despite their differences, they shared this deep and respectful friendship built on shared interests like the opera and mutual respect. How can you find those connection points, those sameness points that you can connect with people so that you don't have to feel like you unfriend or disavow their friendship or even just being colleagues or being around them in their space? Number three, cultivating curiosity, being a curious person. Curiosity is at the core of active listening. It is also how we get to the bottom of someone else's truth and not just floating around in our own echo chamber all the time. Here are some ways to show more curiosity. I would say the biggest way is to make sure that you ask questions offline. So don't start putting questions in, if it's on Facebook or it's on LinkedIn, don't start putting questions there. See if you can send them a direct message. If you know them personally, send them a text message. See if you can get on the phone with them. Once the emotion of the interaction has kind of gone to the side a little bit, minimized a little bit, and that post or that interaction is settled, just don't try to go into the interaction to be right, but to lead with good questions, seeking to understand them more. Now, don't ask snarky, kind of sarcastic questions, because that is not going to send the message that you really are interested in getting to know why they hold a position they do. But you want to approach that discussion like a blank slate, kind of waiting to be shaped by different views. If you don't go into an interaction waiting to be changed, waiting to be impacted in that way, you probably aren't going to be, and you'll probably never find some kind of mid ground with them. I do want to point out, but there are some ways to do this really well. And one of them is knowing which questions to ask, asking questions and how you're going to ask them. So there are two kind of sets of questions or types of questions. One is open-ended questions and one is closed-ended questions. So an example of an open-ended question is, can you help me understand what led you to this viewpoint? And a closed-ended question is, well, do you feel this is a long-held belief by you or for you? Those are how you answer it. One, with the open-ended, gets them talking some more, sharing more stories, giving you more context. The close-ended question gets you to their yes, no answers so you can move people along to maybe the next thing you need to uncover. You're trying to get to a solution, a middle ground, so as you can see, can we keep our friendship, our colleagueship connected in some way, shape, or form? Something to think about. When was the last time you asked someone about their beliefs or opinions without the intention of debating or correcting them? What did you learn from that interaction? Were there any cues? Were there any clues? Did you have any ahas? Number 4, go and engage in some independent research. Like everything that kind of challenges us, it's important not to take anything at face value and not to only look at the surface of an issue, but to really go and think more deeply and look at the entire story. Don't lay the complete burden, though, on the other person to like share with you and educate you on all these things. Take time to educate yourself. The other person on the other end will feel more respected when they know you've gone out of your way to think of their position and take it seriously and to put in the effort to understand them better. Now, remember, understanding is not necessarily agreeing, and it also isn't necessarily accepting it. It just means that I understand and I want to get to the point where if I can understand you just at a little bit deeper level, now maybe I can either come to a closer place of agreeing with you or at least not thinking of you as a crazy person. An example. After the death of George Floyd, many people found themselves kind of confronting complex issues around race and justice. And I had a friend who didn't know exactly what to say or even what to feel amid the divisiveness that was in the media. And she did extensive research to understand race relations, history, and how to talk about these issues before reaching out to me for further discussion. And her willingness, though, to really learn before engaging made our conversation much more meaningful. Here's something I want you to be asking. I want to ask you, and I want you to be thinking about it. How often do you challenge yourself with learning more about different perspectives that are vastly different from your own? What impact does this have on your own worldview? Like, what books are you reading? What shows are you watching? What news stations? What meetings are you attending? Who is in your circle? How are you challenging your thinking? 5, know when to take a step back. If you do all the things I just described and you still are unable to move forward in a respectful relationship with this person, it may be that you do need to have some distance between you and your friend or your colleague. You can maintain professionalism at all times and make sure that you're not gossiping or anything like that in between. Because what you don't want to do is burn a bridge. You want to always keep the lines of potential relationship or communication open in case things do change in people's positions or the way people see things. And now the door still remains open to keep that relationship intact. When we do the thing where we step back and realize, hey, again, self-leadership, I'm understanding my limits. I'm understanding where I stand in my relationship with this person. I know how much I can control and influence, and I'm going to choose to do that right now. then we are acting in a more mature way, much more mature than I'm sure even you and I are seeing out in the world right now. Listen, our current climate is thick with complexities, and there's not an easy answer for how we navigate relationships when we are caught in the middle of this divide. As those who aim to grow in self leadership, leading with heart and demonstrating true caring leadership, it is incumbent upon each of us to set the bar high with how we choose to behave and how we choose to show up. We all have choices. Don't allow your emotions to be hijacked so much that you begin to make choices that you don't really love. It all starts with your willingness to step outside of your own echo chamber and consider the views of other people. When you do that, you will set yourself apart from the majority of those who just walk away, who unfriend or shut people out without genuinely trying to understand how our intersection points create the connection points about how we can together thrive together. Again, being together in this kind of divide, this kind of craziness together, stepping outside that echo chamber. So, how will you do that for you? My hope for you, my prayer for you, is that I've given you some ways and some things to think about, some steps to take, so that you can meet people closer to where they're at, even if it feels uncomfortable to start. And that you can reach outside yourself, outside your comfort zone, step outside that place like I did in that beginning example to say, wait a second, maybe this isn't half bad, or maybe what they're saying is a good point. Do I have to all of a sudden be like them or me or this or that? Or can we coexist together in this big, glorious world of ours? My hope is that you pick the latter choice. I hope everybody is well. I hope you're thriving out there. And remember to love and care first and foremost. Take care, everybody. Be well.